Welcome to Weekly Talkback. I'm Kevin Beers,
And I'm David Witten.
and this is the show where we get to talk to Pastor Dave about his message from a day or two prior. And this week was December 17th, 2023, and the name of your message was, Are you a Martha or a Mary at Christmas? And the first thing that brings up is, first of all, this is not a traditional Christmas story. As a matter of fact, it's not a Christmas story at all. So, what was your inspiration for using this particular story during the Christmas season?
Well, I mean, essentially, it started out as I was thinking about how we do Christmas in the Western part of the world, and maybe in particular, the United States, where we have a tendency to go over the top with decorations and kitchen preparations and shopping and all that. We just seem to try to increase every year the intensity of Christmas as well as the length of Christmas. You know, now we're setting up decorations and singing the music even before Thanksgiving now. As I thought about that, I just thought that we get caught up in all the trappings of Christmas that we lose sight of the real meaning behind Christmas. And for some reason, it must have been God and God, prompting me to think about it. The story of Mary and Martha came up in that particular incident where Jesus comes into their house. And of course, Martha's busy in the kitchen, but Mary is sitting at the feet of Jesus. So I think that's how it really started. Instead of going to the Bible and taking an Advent scripture and then fleshing that out, I was thinking about more of you know application and relevancy. I was thinking about how we do Christmas, which brought me back to a story back in the Bible, which again, as you said, didn't relate to Christmas, and yet it does in the sense of physical and spiritual preparation for Jesus.
Hmm. Yeah, and because it made me think about when we had our first child, um, we had to figure out what our traditions were going to be, how we were going to celebrate Christmas, essentially. We both grew up in households that had traditions, but many of those traditions were somewhat different.
Hmm.
And it's like, okay, so how are we going to bring this all together into our family? And in that process, we were out shopping at the mall when malls were a thing. And what we noticed was how miserable so many people were, yelling at their kids. Like there was no joy
Hmm.
from what we were observing. And that brought us back around to basically, well, I mean, we never went overboard with gifts. That was never a thing for us. We both grew up in households that, yeah, money was an issue, so therefore having a lot of gifts was not a thing. So that
Right.
was actually easy for us. But what we started to see was just people not being happy as a family. So we developed our traditions otherwise, and we have very few preparations. I mean, there's the mad rush because we tend to wait till the last minute for some things, but other than that, I find our Christmases are very laid back and enjoyable. Like we
Yeah.
just enjoy the Christmas season. There's no rush. There's no, we really celebrate Advent as an event, not, it's not the Christmas prep. Well, it's Christmas prep, but it's on the spiritual side.
Yeah. 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 It is interesting how things evolve over time. I mean, years and years ago, and I don't know when the habits started, but like Christmas celebrations actually began Christmas Eve. That's when you went out and grabbed the tree and decorated it, and then the presents were open Christmas Day. But then you celebrated it for 12 days after Christmas. That's where the whole song comes from, all the way up until Epiphany.
Mhm.
when the wise men supposedly came in to the picture. So, we've kind of reversed that now, where as soon as Christmas is over, the Christmas tree is out on the street.
I've noticed that too. Like there's these definite marks on the calendar where the tree goes up on this day, tree comes down on this day,
Yeah,
that kind of thing. And I we had a tree up until May one year. It was an artificial tree, obviously, but it was up forever just because we weren't quite ready to put it away.
Mhm.
Like it we're very non-traditional when it comes to Christmas. So, we still celebrate with family outside of our own. So we do end up in some of those traditions still.
Right. And they're important. I hope that my message yesterday, Sunday, wasn't telling people that some preparation isn't important, because it really is. And the whole story about Mary and Martha really brings that forth, because Jesus came into their household, so you had to host him. So in some sense, Mary was, shirking her duties. Otherwise, if it wasn't for Martha, Jesus wasn't going to get fed. And so what I hope to convey is some preparation is good, but don't get caught up in it at forsaking the spiritual side of Christmas preparations. And I hope that was what came out of my sermon was, you need a little bit of Martha and you need a little bit of Mary. If you find yourself too stressed, then you're probably doing too much Martha and not enough Mary. If you don't have anything to eat for 2 days, you're probably doing a little more Mary than you ought to be.
Yeah, and actually, toward the end of your message, you do say that exactly. Well, not exactly, but very, very close to it. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, be a little less Martha, a little more Mary. Uh, Maybe that was a little presumptuous as far as everybody's being a Martha, but but I think your message made it clear. You got to have that balance.
Mhm.
It,
Exactly.
it's like just living life in general. You got to be preparing. People have to eat. People, so you do that. I want to move on to the story you told from your days in Nigeria,
Okay.
and your story is basically you set up what you described as a really pitiful Christmas tree, a cactus with four lights that actually worked on a string of 20, things like that, and how bummed out you were about it. And then someone passing by was just amazed by the beauty of it all, pretty much humbling you to say, like you're way too American on this one. That might be the message we want, the way I might say it, or as my daughter would always say, it's a first world problems kind of thing. Um, but and that was my experience in the mall when I was seeing these families not being happy, was they were so entrapped in their own traditions maybe, or their own way of thinking, that there was no expression of joy because of it. Whereas, the story you told, are Christmas trees even a thing in Nigeria? I mean,
No,
there's
no,
really
no.
not in much ways.
No lights, no trees, no decorations, actually. It's the big event in at Christmas, of course, is church service. I mean, they come together on Christmas Day and spend hours together celebrating the birth of Christ, and then it usually follows. What follows is probably the nicest meal of the year. And if you ask Judith, that's the only time that she ever got meat in her soup was
Okay,
during
okay,
was during Christmas. So, and they got a new outfit. Usually Christmas time, if the parents could afford it, they would have a new dress for church. And then
okay.
that to church, that's what they would wear every Sunday for the rest of the year. But yeah, I mean, to me, it put things all in perspective. Here I was getting all hung up about how our decorations and our preparations were miserable, and yet to to someone like JJ who did not experience any of that. He was in awe of our little centerpiece of a ugly looking Christmas tree and an ugly looking lights with a little bit of a little tiny nativity scene. To him, it was a holy place. And it really did help bring me back around to the essence of Christmas. And that's what I think you're saying about going to the mall. I don't like shopping. And so if I have to go shopping at Christmas time, I probably am one of those with a downturned face. But if you would let me do Christmas the way I would want, I would spend a lot of time singing. I like to be in the kitchen, maybe baking cookies or something like that. Being more homebound is what I would enjoy, not the crowds. I'm not a person that enjoys crowds, but I mean, to each its own. Balance is what the point is.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like I said, our traditions, there weren't a lot of gifts. There's some gifts, and and they're very well because there's so few gifts, you really have to think about the best gift you can give rather than if it's a large quantity, you just buy whatever you find and there's no real thought. A lot of gifts within my immediate family, there's homemade things in there. There's things that have real meaning
Mhm,
as a gift. It's
mhm.
not just a store-bought, hey, like, there's that stereotypical waited till the last minute, so had to stop by a 7-Eleven and pick something, pick up a wrench or something, and that's the
Yeah.
gift. Or the laundry soap or whatever it might be because you waited too long for it all to happen. There's nothing like that. It's like all the gifts are, as a matter of fact, between Barbara and myself, we're talking about what do we get the grandkids? Like it's not gonna be huge, but it's got to be really meaningful. And we start thinking about that like 6 weeks out
Mm,
on how we're gonna make that particular gift special.
mhm. That's
So
good. That's
yeah,
good.
and I think your message brings all that out. Like you can be simple and it can be the best Christmas ever. And you don't have to be prepping and like I love being in the kitchen. So yeah, I don't, but I do find that like on the days when everybody's here, I do all the prep work before they get there, so I can spend time with them too. So then
Good for you.
the
Mhm.
planning.
So
I don't
you're not Martha in the kitchen while Jesus is out in the rocker.
right now, in, in all honesty, first of all, Jesus didn't call ahead. He just sort of showed up, and now there's prep to do. I get that, and that can happen too. So I don't knock anybody for how they do what they do, but I mean, my encouragement would be tr figure out how to find the joy. And if your traditions are trapping you, then come up with new traditions, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, maybe Jesus should have come on in there and then said, "Hey, Mary, let's go in and help Martha with the meal," and have all three of them working in there.
It- you know, well, I might have done that, but I'm not, I wasn't the most important person in the room either. So,
Well, that's right. That's right. And whether the disciples would have even allowed Jesus to go in there and work with Martha in the kitchen, that'd be another thing too.
back in those days, would men have been in the kitchen at all?
Probably not. And that's probably
Right.
what we see. But it is interesting. One more quick thought was that Martha went out and didn't scold Mary, but actually scolded Jesus for allowing Mary to skirt or shirk her duties,
Right. It
which
was
I thought
like,
was an interesting twist.
yeah, it's almost like this is a guy's meeting and women need to be in the kitchen.
That's right.
It was almost that kind of
That's
thing.
yeah, I got that too.
But at the same time, I mean, if I were Martha, yeah, they're like you are always, you're the one who helps in the kitchen and that you're not helping and we have things to do.
Exactly.
I kind of get I
Oh, I got. Well, I mean, I truly believe that most of us probably support Martha in this story more than Mary. In a way, I mean, if someone comes unannounced to your house, are you going to sit there and and to host them without preparing something to eat? No, you're going to go in there and have to find something to eat.
Yeah. Anytime I walked in my grandmother's house, it was like, oh, you look hungry.
Well, that's it. I mean, that was the
And
tradition. You did feed people.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, we will wrap it up there. And hey, tell us what your thoughts are. If you have not heard the entire message, I'll link it down in the description. Tell us what you think about the message. Tell us what you think about this recording here, and leave your comments. What are your traditions, and what would you like to change, or what would you like to keep the same, or anything like that? And we'll see you next week.
Uh-huh. Merry Christmas to everyone.